Okay, so, hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Berserker Claws show. And this is also going to be a thing that I'm going to be posting to Rumble. Because I'm going to do something on Rumble too. So I'm going to be starting to post things on YouTube and Rumble and all sorts of different things. So this is the Berserker Claws show. So I am working on a graphic novel. I'm working on a graphic novel that a lot of people don't know, but I actually I didn't write a book. I actually have compiled all the dreams that I've ever had together to come up with this idea for a story. It's called the Jaxamous the Berserker story. And the Jaxamous the Berserker story is not a documentary. It's actually a graphic novel where the idea for Jaxamous Claws came from, or Jaxamous the Berserker, where he came from. Basically what it is Jaxamous the Berserker is a character that I had a dream about. And basically what happens is he's immortal. He is like a bastard son. Yeah, he's a bastard son of Odin. So I am going to basically do the beginning of the story, the Jaxamous the Berserker story. And this story is basically my graphic novel. So there is some nasty parts in it. There are some adult stuff in it. So it's not made for children. Basically what I'm telling you is I'm telling you that this graphic novel is something that I have had dreams about. And this is where the whole Jaxamous thing came from. Okay? So the name Jaxamous basically is from a character that I had a dream about. And he is a Viking son of Odin. So he's like a bastard son of Odin. So, you're familiar with Loki and you're familiar with Thor. Well, Jaxamous is kind of like a bastard son that never happened. And so Jaxamous is kind of like a son of Odin that nobody ever really knows about. So that's what Jaxamous the Berserker is. It's a story. It's a graphic novel. So this is where the story takes place. And just listen to me and bear with, because this is how the story starts. The story takes place in the Viking periods, around the 600s. Yeah, around 600s. Basically, Jaxamous's mom, she's a lady that has a house. She has a hut that's kind of away from the village, that's kind of like really far out. She grows her own crops. She has her own corn. She has her own chickens. She has basically her own kind of lifestyle. She's a very attractive woman. Very attractive, very beautiful, very Valkyrie, shield maiden kind of thing. She does fight in battles. She's fought in a couple of battles. She knows how to wield a sword. She knows how to shoot a crossbow. She knows how to, use a shield, and she knows how to kill people. Yeah, she knows pretty much how to be a badass. Basically, she's kind of muscular. She has, not very big, she doesn't have like very big, breasts. I mean, she's kind of like, basically she looks like Cammy. Yeah, she kind of looks like Cammy from Street Fighter, but she's got like more of a muscular more of a muscular body. She stands about 5, maybe 5'10", 5'11", and she's a very like very dominant shield maiden woman. I mean, she knows how to fight. She knows how to kill some people. She's pretty badass. She knows how to grow her own crops. She basically has a hut, and she has kind of like a farm, kind of like outside of the village. So, one day, after they've had some battles, she comes back to her hut, and she rebuilds her hut, fixes it up. Jaxamous' mom. She doesn't really have a name. I've never really named her character because I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to name her. I didn't really know what kind of a name to give her, but she is a Valkyrie shield maiden. She's kind of like she's basically like a Valkyrie and a shield maiden together. She knows how to take care of her shit. She knows how to handle herself because she knows how to fight. She's a badass. So she's a really strong kind of individual woman. She knows how to take care of herself if she has to. So she lives outside of the village. This village is a little town, and there's a stream and a lake that's kind of by her house, and she has her own garden. She has chickens, she has cows, she has bulls, and she knows how to pretty much grow her own crops and take care of her own fields. And so she's out after a couple of battles, after a couple of wars. She's come home and she's been cut up, and she's basically taking care of herself, but she needed to, have food and everything. And so she's been taking care of herself. She has this lake and this stream by her house. And one day, she basically is just sitting there, and this guy comes out of nowhere. Now, this guy that came out of nowhere, he was in the village, and supposedly everybody said that this was Odin. And Odin usually comes down from Asgard, and he goes to these random villages, and sometimes he causes mischief, he causes problems, he basically looks for a maiden. He kind of cheats on Freya a little bit, and so he kind of comes down from Asgard, and he's walking around the village, and he's causing a lot of problems, and he's causing a lot of ruckus for people in this village. And he basically goes there, and when he goes there, he finds he basically doesn't. He's looking for a mate, is what he's looking for. He's looking for somebody to have one of his kids, to basically, to be the father of a bastard child, is basically what he's going to do. He wants to make another immortal child. He wants to make somebody who becomes, like a badass child. Because he's done this before. He's come down from Asgard, and he basically slept with this woman before. He's had sex with her, and she ended up having a child. And when the child was born, the child basically ripped out of the mother, and basically was taken in by like a witch doctor, or taken in by a family in the neighborhood, which, this girl, she was raised by and she was a bastard daughter. She was a bastard daughter of Odin, so she's really good with potions and elixirs, and she's a Valkyrie. And her name is like Valkyrie Jane, or Valkyrie Joe, or Valkyrie something or another. But she's a Valkyrie shield maiden, and she basically, is like, it's not Joe or anything like that. It's just basically Valkyrie somebody, And she is a girl character that's come down to... She's basically a bastard. She's a bastard daughter of Odin, is what she is. And she was raised by a witch doctor, or she was raised by, one of the, witch doctors in the village. So she was raised by, basically just, like a medicine man or somebody who's got those kind of skills with potions and elixirs and different kinds of things. And she can do different things to her body. She can make her body grow. She can make her body shrink. She can actually, change her whole body. She can shapeshift. She can, basically grow to 50 feet tall if she wants to. She can basically do all kinds of things. And she's basically the bastard daughter of Odin. Now, you think like Hela... You think it's hell, but no, it's not hell. You think it's another thing. No, it's basically she's a bastard daughter of Odin. So basically she's just this, girl that's got a lot of these skills, and she's very immortal, and she can live for a very long time. Now, she won't show up for a while until after Jaxamous is born. So now Odin, So this Valkyrie character, we'll call her Valkyrie Jane. Yeah, we'll call her Valkyrie Jane, is what we'll call her. Valkyrie Janie or Valkyrie Jane, and she basically is the bastard daughter of Odin. She's her dad right now in the village is a medicine man, and she's been around for almost 100 years. So she actually is 100 years older than Jaxamous is. Yes. So she was born in the 500s. Valkyrie Jane was born in the 500s. She was a bastard son of Odin, because Odin usually comes down every 100 years and he plants a seed, has a bastard child, or does something really stupid to cause nothing but raise hell and raise havoc or raise anything. So what he did was he had a bastard daughter. So now he's come down again, and basically this time he's come into the village. He's done some shit. He's knocked over some things, and people are like, oh, Odin's down here again, and they think it's him. And he's been walking around the village, and he saw Jaxamous's mom. And he saw her basically, and he just fell in love with her. Like, he instantaneously got a boner, like hard on, Jaxamous's mom is, basically she's picking up some stuff from the village, like she's getting things that she needs, for the farm and everything. And then she starts walking home, and she decides to stop off and do some fishing. So basically she puts all of her stuff in the house, and then she goes and grabs her spear and goes and starts fishing. And there's this stream right by her house, and it's a lake and everything, and she's got all this stuff. She turns around and she doesn't catch anything, and then she looks around and she doesn't catch anything, and then all of a sudden she's just really tired from fishing. So basically what she does is she ends up going for a swim. Basically takes off her clothes. She basically lays her clothes on the rocks and basically starts bathing in the water and everything else, and she has her spear with her, and basically she is just in the water, and she's swimming around naked, and she's just basically sitting there. And Odin is kind of, like creeping, and he's spying on her, and he all of a sudden he sees her beauty, and he just is taken off by her, and he ends up falling and hitting the rocks and bouncing off the rocks, ends up hurting himself, and then she throws the spear at him, and she hits him and catches him in the shoulder with the spear, and all of a sudden Odin pulls the spear out, and he ends up cutting himself up, and she ends up getting him, and he ends up, laying there, and he says that he's really hurt, and he ends up hurting himself, and she takes him and carries him into the house, or carries him into the hut, and puts him down in front of the fire and makes him feel better. And all of a sudden, one thing led to another, and they started kissing, ended up having some wild, passionate sex. She ends up fucking Odin, and basically she wakes up the next morning, and she's like, holy crap, what happened? Or she's got a headache and everything else, and she just feels really weird. And over time, she feels really weird, and then in 600s, which is the time we're in now, Jaxamous is born. So Jaxamous' mom, basically, she ends up getting really sick, and she ends up going into the village, and she ends up going to the Jarl of the village, which is the king. And she ends up laying on the stairs, and she gives birth to this kid. Yeah, she ends up giving birth to this kid. Jaxamous is his name, and he is basically the bastard son of Odin, which he grows up a lot faster than normal kids. He, by the time he's 21 years of age, he's immortal, but he's massive. He's 6 feet tall, he's like 6 feet 9 inches tall, really huge, really muscular, very big, built guy, basically he's like 369 pounds. He's very muscular, very big, and he basically is a powerhouse. He's basically the bastard son of Odin. So when he turns 21 years of age, so 21 years have gone by since he was born, he basically ripped out of his mom. He basically ripped out of her, ending up killing her and laying on the rocks, and was found by this Valkyrie Jane. She found him, ended up raising him, and teaching him the ways of being an immortal human. Now, Jaxamous, the thing about him is he has impeccable strength. He's stronger than 100,000 guys, 100,000 warriors. He's immortal. You can't touch him. You can't cut him. You can't do anything to him. He basically, you try to cut him, and he heals instantaneously. I mean, if you cut his head off and you put his head right next to his body, it would go back together, because he's basically the bastard son of Odin, which means that he is, the only way that he can be killed is be killed by a god, meaning that the only person that can kill him is Odin or Freya. Yes, Odin or Freya are the only two people that can kill him. Yes, he can't be killed by the bastard daughter or by Thor. He can't be killed by Thor, Loki, or anybody like that. He can only be killed by Odin. And Jaxamous can only he can only be killed by Freya or Odin, and Jaxamous can kill Odin, but he can't. But he's pretty much the last. He's pretty much the last saving grace. Him and this Valkyrie Jane. They're the only two that can be together. I don't know if it's Valkyrie Jane. I haven't really thought of the name yet. I thought it was Valkyrie Jake or Valkyrie Jacqueline, but I haven't really thought of any name for it. We're working on the names right now because I haven't really come up with who I want to call her. but the Valkyrie that I talk about, she is 100 years older than Jaxamous, but she is not any more powerful than him. Basically, Jaxamous is the almighty, and then she's like the ninth wonder of the world. She's like the second strongest person in the world. Yes. Basically, she can't kill Jaxamous, but he can kill her. And I don't know why that is. It's just the way that the story goes. Jaxamous is basically the bastard son of Odin, and he is around for a long time. He ages really slow. So what happens is every 1,000 years that goes by, Jaxamous ages 1 year. Yes. So every 500 years that goes by, Valkyrie ages 1 year. Yes. So it's like half. Yeah. It's like, they took the rib and then, they made Adam and Eve. Yeah, okay. That's kind of how it is. But Jaxamous is 100% more superior to Valkyrie, and Valkyrie is half of Jaxamous. So basically, Valkyrie is like half of Jaxamous, but she can't kill him. He can't kill her. Or he can kill her, but she can't kill him. Because Jaxamous is stronger than she is. Jaxamous is like the last known survivor in the world. The only thing is that once Odin dies, then Jaxamous becomes the Allfather, the new Allfather. That's basically what happens in the story. Jaxamous becomes the Allfather. Yeah, that's what he becomes. So now you don't even need to read the rest of the book or anything like that. You know who the ending is all about. But it's a really good story, and it talks about, what happens. So now, Jaxamous' mom has literally been killed because this offspring that she has rips out of her uterus, basically is born, and then Valkyrie comes and picks up Jaxamous, puts him in a basket and a blanket on him, and then she basically pretends to be the mother. What she does is she puts the basket on this king's steps and then walks away. And this lady hears the baby crying, and it's got a necklace on, and it's got a J on it. Yeah, it's got a J on it. And she brings the baby inside, and the Jarl's like, "What is this? What is this monstrosity that you brought into me?" And the lady's like, "It was a baby king, or baby sir. It was laying on your stairs. No mother, nobody around, no note. The only thing is it had this necklace on its neck with a J on it. And if you look at this baby, this baby's huge. He's already almost 10 inches long. And he's just laying in a basket. He's very heavy, sir. Or very heavy, Your Highness." And she goes, "Well, you can have him. I don't want nothing to do with him. I'm busy with the queen right now. We're trying to make our own child. Because the thing is that for some odd reason, I can't have kids. And every goddamn time we try to have kids, I get bothered by all sorts of bullshit and dismay and problems and suffering. Because I hear so much people crying all the time. And she's like, and he's like, well, aren't you and your husband trying to have kids? And she goes, well, you know, I don't really have a husband, sir, or your highness. And he's like, well, there you go. Now you have a kid. So it's actually Valkyrie in disguise. Yeah, so Valkyrie gets in disguise. Basically, she works in the village, but she goes back out to where Jaxamous' mom used to live all the time. So she goes back and forth in the village, and she basically she's standing in as Jaxamous' mother, but she's not really Jaxamous' mother. She's not. No. Valkyrie Jane, or Valkyrie Jacqueline, or whatever we call her. She's basically the bastard. She's the bastard daughter of Odin. She's been around 100 years before Jack has, and basically she's a daughter that was married to a medicine man who knows all this stuff, but she has all these secret powers. She has all these different powers that Odin basically gave her. Freya and Odin gave her these powers. And so basically she knows how to mix up potions, and she knows how to do everything else. Now when Jaxamous turns 21 in 621, Jaxamous becomes immortal. He basically becomes an all-powerful being who's working on becoming the All-Father. He's working his way in becoming the All-Father once Odin dies. Yes. And then Valkyrie and Jaxamous, they become the new Odin and Freya in the future. So, yeah, that's like a million years down the road, though. Or like 100 years down the road. Or 1,000 years down the road. We just don't know that yet. But that's what he's becoming. So, so Jaxamous is, right now we're in 600s. That's where Jaxamous is born. Yes, he's born in the 600s. He's growing at an alarming rate. So basically, 5 years go by. So it's 605. And yeah, it's 605 AD or whatever the hell it is. I don't know what the number would be. But we're in 605 BC, or we're in Viking times. We're in 600s. We're in the Viking era. We're in 605. So Jaxamous is now basically like he's 10 years old. But it's only been 5 years gone by. His body size is just massively growing up. He's basically like a 5-year-old kid, but he looks like he looks like a little person. He looks like a midget. Yeah, he's already like 4 feet tall. Yeah, he's already like 4 feet tall, and he's muscular as fuck already. And he's like can punch through walls and shit, and like when he runs around and stuff like that, it basically looks really funny because Jaxamous is just jacked. I mean, like, this guy is pure muscle. Yeah, he's like pure muscle, and he can literally punch through walls and his hands don't get hurt. They don't get broken. They don't anything. He basically is a strong little fucker. Basically, that's what he is. He's massive as hell, and he's starting to get really, he's starting to get really muscular, really thick, and really big. And he ends up fighting with the local kids in the neighborhood, and he ends up beating the crap out of this kid. And he kills this kid. Yeah. And, but Valkyrie brings this kid back to life, because, he ends up knocking this kid out, and they were fighting, and he ends up knocking this kid out, and then he ends up, cooking Like he ends up cooking like turkey or chicken, and he ends up like cooking a chicken and eating a chicken just basically whole by himself, just sitting there and, whatever. And he was wielding a sword. He was like wielding a sword and axes at like, 10 and just playing around in the yard. And just like, fighting with like the local, soldiers in the neighborhood. And he was ending up playing with them, and he ended up cutting one of the guys, and then he ended up getting cut. And Valkyrie, so it's kind of funny when Valkyrie sees Jaxamous, so there is something really that's going to happen later on in the story, but Valkyrie is basically Jaxamous's love interest. Yeah, because basically what happens is Jaxamous is supposed to find Valkyrie, and they're supposed to get together. Yes. Because they're supposed to be husband and wife. Or they're supposed to be a love interest. Yeah, they're supposed to love each other. But Jaxamous can do anything he wants, because basically he's immortal. He can fuck anybody he wants. He can sleep with anybody he wants. He won't impregnate anybody unless he really wants to. Or he can just sleep with whoever he wants to, because he's just that kind of a guy. But he's only like 10 years old. Yeah. He's already 6 feet tall. He's 10 years old, and yeah, he's basically. We're only in 605 right now, and he's basically like a 10-year-old kid. He's like already 6 feet tall. He's already 6 feet tall. He's muscular as hell. He's growing up so fast. So time goes by. Basically, we're ending up being into 621. So now he's 21 years of age, and Jaxamous is basically laying in the hut. He's laying in the hut, and Valkyrie, she goes away for a while, and Jaxamous has this final transformation. What happens to him is he becomes 6 feet 9 inches tall. He basically grows a 27-inch, like almost a 30-inch penis. Yep, which is 30 inches by about 3 inches wide, basically. He grows this massive pecker in his pants, and he basically becomes this superior guy. He's basically like he's like 100% muscle. Yeah. He's got like 69 inch centimeter arms, almost 30-inch arms. I mean, he's massive. He's basically he's all muscle. Yeah. And he's just basically massive. He's like 6 feet 9 inches tall. He's 369 pounds of just pure muscle. That's all he is. He's pure muscle. Basically, he can punch through walls. He can grow. Yeah, he can grow to be over to be 100 or 200 feet tall. Yeah. He can grow 200 feet tall or 1,000 feet tall. He basically is just like, he's like the Incredible Hulk, Thor, Abomination, and basically the Red Hulk all rolled into one. And he's this massive guy. Really long, flowing hair. Basically looks like a Viking. Just basically whatever, Kind of like Conan the Barbarian, but like Jaxamous. They call him Jaxamous the Berserker. He basically, in 621, so now he is supposed to go on. So the Vikings are supposed to go to war. and he's supposedly supposed to help win this war, but he ends up going on a vision quest, or he ends up going on a walk. He ends up basically burning down the hut by the water, and he basically takes off on his own. Now, Valkyrie, he basically thinks that that's his mother, but he basically says to her, well, you know, I'm grown up now. It's time for me to go on my own. I don't need you around anymore, but thank you for raising me. And basically what happens is Valkyrie's like, you're welcome, and then she lets him go. She lets him go, but basically they're supposed to consummate. They're supposed to basically consummate. They're supposed to be husband and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend, or they're supposed to fuck or whatever. But Jaxamous goes through this transformation, and he just gets fucking jacked. He gets muscular as fuck. Basically, he pretty much just throws everything on his back, and he goes on this vision quest. And he's supposedly supposed to go fight a Viking war. Yeah, he's supposed to go fight with this king, this Jarl of the village. Well, what happens is the Jarl of the village gets killed. Jaxamous leaves. The village gets taken over by somebody else. And Jaxamous pretty much just goes on his own little quest. And when this happens, Valkyrie kind of disappears. But she ends up going away. She disappears. But she always follows Jaxamous around. She's always like there. And so Jaxamous goes to this, he goes on this quest. And on this quest, he comes around and he notices that there's a bear caught in a trap. And the bear is like a little cub. And he ends up breaking the trap, and the bear comes out and starts biting him and starts trying to fight Jaxamous, but the bear realizes to himself that Jaxamous is very strong and that he's not somebody to mess with, so the bear starts following Jaxamous around. Jaxamous now names this bear Rebel J, or calls him, he calls him Rebel something, or calls him Rebel J, just because he thought it'd be kind of cool to call him Rebel J. And this bear is a white polar bear kind of colored bear with gray skin, or it's like a grayish white fur pattern. Kind of like a spirit bear is basically what it is. And Jaxamous just basically takes care of this bear, and they pretty much have a following. They pretty much are like, the bear and Jaxamous become best friends. Sometimes when Jaxamous is fighting some people, because sometimes Jaxamous starts getting attacked by these people, the bear comes out of nowhere and starts attacking these people, and then the bear gets cut up, but then Jaxamous basically gives, heals the bear, and then the bear ends up getting healed and, lives a little bit longer. So Jaxamous ends up healing the bear, and after he ends up doing that, the bear ends up not aging until after like 250 years go by. So like when 250 years go by, when 250 years go by, the bear ages. So the bear becomes kind of immortal. Yeah. Yeah. So the bear kind of like, has this ability to like heal itself and not be, killed, but, it can, but it gets hurt, but it also heals itself. See, if you end up cutting Jaxamous, he'll heal instantaneously. So like, you basically cut him and it takes like 1 day for him to heal. You cut Valkyrie, it takes 5 days for her to heal. Or not, it like takes a day and a half for her to heal. You cut the bear and it takes 2 days for him to heal. Yeah. Because, that's just how it goes. And but Valkyrie is basically, she knows that she has to be with Jaxamous, and then when she heals, or like when she basically is with Jaxamous, that's how they replenish themselves. That's basically how they re-heal themselves. They basically have to have sex with each other, and then once they have sex with each other, that rejuvenates their clock. Is basically what it does. It resets their clock, but they don't know that. Jaxamous does not know that he has to sleep with Valkyrie to heal himself or to rejuvenate himself. Yes. That's how it goes. That's how they consummate their love, is pretty much what they end up doing, and that's how they live a little bit longer. They find that out, how they re-heal themselves, is basically they'll end up, with each other, and they have sex and everything else. But basically, Jaxamous is on this vision quest, and he ends up going to these different villages. And he walks up into this village one day, and this guy looks at him and says, "I don't like your kind," and he gets in a fight with him, and Jaxamous is like, not trying to like knock this guy's head complete off his face. So what he ends up doing is he just ends up like pushing the guy like with his hand, and he ends up pushing him into a table. And sure enough, he's like, "Oh, okay, well, you want to go?" And this guy's like, "Well, let's get it on." And Jaxamous is like, "Okay, fine, let's end up doing this." And so Jaxamous is out here fighting this guy, and all of a sudden Jaxamous just grabs this dude and throws him, and the guy goes flying like 100 feet in the air and hits the ground, and people are like, "Holy shit, this kid's got some skills. This kid's strong as balls." And they didn't understand that Jaxamous was as strong as 100,000 men. Yeah. So Jaxamous is as strong as 100,000 men. So one Jaxamous is equal to 100,000 men. Yep. One Valkyrie is compared to 50,000 men. Yeah. Valkyrie, she is strong as 50,000 men. I don't understand why Jaxamous, his powers are so much stronger than hers, because I don't know if that's just how Odin made it, but because he dialed it down or something, I don't know. But it's not trying to be, sexist or racist or anything like that. It's just trying to be, everyday thing here, But Odin is basically who Odin is, and he is basically strong, and he knows what he wants. So he did what he had to do. He gave the powers at bay to what he wanted the kids to have. So Valkyrie and Jaxamous basically are Odin's bastard kids. Yes. Valkyrie's 100 years older because she's been here longer. She's been on the earth longer than Jaxamous has. So every 1,000 years that goes by, Jaxamous ages 1 year. Every 500 years that goes by, Valkyrie ages. Yes. So every 500 years, Valkyrie ages 1 year. So, yeah, it's really weird how they age, but it's, and the funny thing is that you've got to understand that, so we're in 2025 right now. We're in 2025 is what we're in. Yep, we're in 2025. So we've had 2,000 years. Okay? But you gotta understand, Jaxamous has only aged 1.5 years in the 2020, says they've had 1,025, and now they're at 2025, so he's gone 1.5 years in aging. Yes. But his body looks like he's an old guy. Yeah. Jaxamous looks like he's 45 years of age. He's got the white beard. He's got the white hair. Really long, flowing, muscular body. He's just massive. Just a massive man. That's what he is. And he basically is immortal. He goes slower than everybody else, but he knows he's very intelligent, very smart, very, witty kind of guy. Funny, laughs. I mean, yes, he could take out Thor if he really wanted to, but Thor is like his brother, and Loki is like his brother. But he never meets them because he never goes to Asgard. He never goes to Asgard unless he has to. The only reason why he goes there is in case Odin needs him. But Odin doesn't need him right now. No, Odin and Freya are fine. See, what it is Valkyrie is basically a daughter, so that Odin went down and had a few drinks and he fucked up a little bit and he got himself all messed up, and then he stumbles upon this hot chick, great body, great whatever, and she had a farm, lived by herself, no father, no brother, no husband, no nothing. Odin slides into her DMs. Basically, he just says, he basically pretends to hurt himself, and he pretends to hurt himself, bangs Valkyrie's mom, and a couple years later, Valkyrie's born, but she's a bastard child out of wedlock. There's no mom, because basically what happened is as soon as Valkyrie was born, she ripped out of her mother. Yeah, she ripped out of her mother and basically started becoming a woman. She started becoming a woman. And then Freya ended up taking care of Valkyrie, but Freya was pretending to be somebody else. She was trying to pretend like she was a lonely mother that didn't have anything. So she ended up getting in with the witch doctor or the witch guy, the witchy dude in the Viking village. So she ends up getting in with him, raises the daughter. The daughter goes in, learns about potions, learns about, traveling, and learns about all this freaking great stuff that makes her a rocket science. Makes her like a rocket scientist. Makes her knows all this stuff about Asgard and all these different places. And now that Jaxamous is growing up, Jaxamous is learning about it from Valkyrie, but does not know that Valkyrie is supposedly supposed to be his girlfriend, or they're supposed to be together. Valkyrie and Jaxamous end up becoming together. That's what they end up doing. But the thing is that Jaxamous is taking his time to basically get to know, Valkyrie. Because, well, this is basically the first chapter of the story. And basically, Jaxamous is our hero, and he is supposedly someday supposed to be the next Allfather. But right now, Jaxamous is just on a vision quest. We found out who Valkyrie is. We know that she is who she is. And Jaxamous is now on his own with his polar bear type, companion. And basically, he is going around trying to figure out what he's supposed to do. Yeah, he's supposed to be looking for, things to do. He's supposed to be trying to find things. He's on a vision quest. He's basically learning knowledge, learning things about where his surroundings are. So basically, Jaxamous is he's kind of like in his own little world. He goes to all these little towns, all these little places, but the thing is that he doesn't age very fast. He ages a lot differently than other people. So basically it takes him a long time to age, but right now if you look at him, you'd think that he was a 25-year-old kid. Yeah, you'd think he was a 25-year-old kid, because he's muscular as balls, he's huge, he's big, he basically, goes into these little towns, and basically what he does is he fights people all the time and ends up taking their land and buying their houses from them and doing all kinds of stuff, just living his life. And supposedly in 621 he was supposed to fight alongside this king. Jaxamous went on a vision quest. The king of his old village ends up getting killed. The village gets taken over by some asshole, and Jaxamous is basically banished because he's gone. He doesn't even live there anymore. Doesn't even live in the village anymore. But one day, he turns around and he comes back to the village that he used to live in, and then everybody hates him because the Jarl got killed. And then what he does is he basically goes up to the new Jarl and he says, hey, I'm challenging you to a fight to give these people what they had when my dad was running it, or when my dad was in charge of it. But his dad is actually dead now, so yes, he's, it's like 621 now, or 625, or whatever like that. It's been almost like, 15 years, so it's like 631 or 6 something, whatever, he comes back. 21 years, after that, so it's like almost 700s. Yeah, it's almost 700s. And Jaxamous comes back to the village to try to, talk to these people and say, hey, look, I'm sorry that the king got killed, but I'm going to make it right, and I'm going to go kill the Jarl, and then I'm going to take, over the village, or give it to the person that I think should run it. So, that's what he does. So, he goes inside to the village, and there's all these guys that Jaxamous ends up fighting. They all know the king. They all know the Jarl. Basically, Jaxamous has to get through all these guys to get to the Jarl. And he's up to this guy now who basically is the Jarl's general. Mm-hmm. And the Jarl's general says, before you go to fight the Jarl, or before you meet the Jarl, you have to get through me and 100 of my best men. So Jaxamous is sitting here, and he's like, fine. I challenge all y'all motherfuckers, you know? Well, he doesn't say motherfucker, but he's basically like, I challenge all y'all bastards. Or all you stains. And the Jarl's general's like, fine. So Jaxamous is sitting here, and he's taking on 100 of these guys. Jaxamous is fighting all these dudes, just beating the crap out of all these guys. He ends up taking all of them down. Ends up winning. Gets to the Jarl's general. Gets to the king's general. And before the king's general even goes anywhere, the king's general is basically this massive guy. He's just huge, And he stands next to Jaxamous, and Jaxamous looks right at him and is basically like, okay, whatever. And Jaxamous goes back and throws an axe and breaks the Jarl's shield. It snaps the Jarl's shield in half. And he throws the axe at Jaxamous, and he says, haha, that's nothing. He throws the axe at him, and the axe, Jaxamous catches it in his hand. And he says, you try to kill me with my own axe? He says, likewise, that'll never happen. And he's just like, he's sitting there and they're fighting back and forth. And then Jaxamous ends up punching the dude to where his head explodes. Literally his head just blows up into like 1,000 pieces. The Jarl's general is just basically destroyed, just killed. The Jarl comes out and says, holy shit, I don't want no problems. And he says, you know what? He says, I'll just let you run the country, but you better change it and run it back the way it was, and people better be treated fairly, paid, and treated with respect. And if they're not, and I find out about it, I'm coming back here and killing you. And so everybody was treated fairly. And everybody loved the new Jarl, loved the way the Jarl was running things, loved how everybody was buying and gathering, and trading was fine, and everything was going good, and there wasn't any pillaging or anything that was having to be done. It was all nicely, everybody playing nice with each other. That's basically what it was. And Jaxamous ended up going someplace else, and he ended up just doing all this stuff. And then later, we're coming up into the 700s. It's a couple of years have gone by. We're almost in the 800s, and everything's going very well. We're getting into the 800s. Jaxamous is, he hasn't aged much, because, not even 1,000 years has gone by. Jaxamous is still being the man that he is. So he looks like he's 45 years of age, but he's trapped in a 21-year-old body. So, yeah, he looks like he's older. But Jaxamous is basically 6'9". Yeah, he's 6'9", 369 pounds. Yep, he's 369. He's basically built like a brick shit house. And basically, he goes around and just bees himself. Jaxamous ends up going to this other village. And one night, he was laying on this thing. And we haven't heard from Valkyrie. So we haven't heard from Valkyrie for a while. Valkyrie has been doing her own thing. She was living in this hut, and she went away. Yeah, she went away from Jaxamous, and she forgot about him. She forgot about Jaxamous. And basically, Jaxamous was laying... So they were back in this kind of area that was kind of like Jaxamous' mom's house. It was a lake and a stream. Valkyrie was out fishing, and Jaxamous was in the water, and Rebel J, the bear, Rebel J was out fishing, and Valkyrie thought that she was gonna kill Rebel J. She thought that she was gonna spear that big bear, and she was going to get a jacket and a coat out of it and some food. So she throws the spear. The spear hits Jaxamous in the side of the chest and cuts him, and he ends up laying there, and Valkyrie is standing there naked because Valkyrie was swimming. Now, Valkyrie is a very beautiful woman. She's very beautiful. She's got very long black hair. Yeah. She, we said that Jaxamous' mom basically looked like Cammy from Street Fighter. Yes. We said that she basically looked like Cammy from Street Fighter. Valkyrie looks kind of like Tifa. Looks like Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. Now, if you guys don't know what Final Fantasy VII is, Final Fantasy VII is a video game that came out a long time ago, and Tifa is this girl who wears like a white wife beater top and a pair of brown shorts with some boots, and she's got some big titties. She's got some really big boobs, and she's very gorgeous. So Valkyrie is basically like a cross between Tifa and Chun-Li from Street Fighter, and she has like a reddish, kind of crimson style colored hair. Yeah, Valkyrie's got like a reddish kind of, style hair, but she's kind of like a really badass. She's a really badass fighter. She's got really big tits and a huge butt. Yeah, she's got a really nice body. She's really muscular. Yep, she's very muscular. Valkyrie basically is a woman that could basically grab you and rip you apart. Yeah. She's got the strength of like 50,000 men. But she's a badass. Yeah, she's a badass. And she's the bastard daughter of Odin. What she is. Yeah, she can kill Hela if she wants to. She can kill Thor if she wants to. Yeah, she's been fucked by Thor. Yep, Thor ended up having sex with her. Yeah. And then she beat the shit out of Thor. She punched him and beat the crap out of him. But, she's basically walking around this pond, and she throws this spear. She throws this spear and she throws this axe at this bear, and she's trying to hit Rebel J. And Jaxamous comes out of nowhere and gets hit by the spear in the chest, but he stopped the axe with his hand, and so he got a cut on his hand, which healed instantaneously. And then he got hit by this spear. And he's like, what the fuck? He's like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, what are you doing? why are you trying to kill my bear? And she's standing there completely naked. Yeah. Valkyrie's standing there naked, tits hanging out, ass just dripping wet, fucking naked as balls. Jaxamous just sitting there in the water, and he's like, dude, we're just fishing. We're trying to get food, And all of a sudden she's like, well, I thought the bear was trying to attack me. And he goes, likewise, the bear's actually trying to catch fish in his mouth. And he was growling at me because the thing is that we were play fighting. Playing, joking around, whatever. And he goes, well, now I'm bleeding. Well, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, well, I guess it's healed now, so I'm fine. But you tried to kill my bear. And she goes, well, God, I didn't know. I'm sorry. And then they ended up catching fish together. One thing leads to another. And Valkyrie starts to look at Jaxamous in a different kind of way, and Jaxamous looks at her, and Jaxamous is like, laying there, and he just gets a giant, massive hard-on, and she basically is like, holy crap, this is really happening. And they end up fucking each other, making wild, passionate sex, and they end up banging each other. And then after they had sex, what happens is Jaxamous is like, dude, I feel really refreshed. And she's like, I feel a lot different. And she goes, God, we feel weird. And so it's like we're rejuvenated, or like we're rejuvenated, like we feel like we're stronger, like we feel like we could just take on the world. And they ended up having sex again, and she grew 50 feet tall, and Jaxamous grew 200 feet tall, and Jaxamous basically fucked the shit out of her and made the earth shake and made earthquakes happen and everything else, and basically like harvesting, like corn and everything started growing, and people started had waterways come through their neighborhood, and everything started happening, and basically things started happening because these two these two fucked, had sex with each other, and things started to happen. Crops started growing, shit started happening, and everything was, pretty much going, down, or it was going a positive aura, because Jaxamous and Valkyrie ended up having sex, which the world needs that every once in a while. Every season, pretty much. So they ended up doing their thing, And so Jaxamous and Valkyrie ended up doing their thing, and things started happening, and the world started changing, and everything started going better. So Valkyrie says to Jaxamous, she says, well, she goes, where do I know you from? And he goes, well, I used to live in this village, and there used to be a Jarl there that was so-and-so, and he was supposed to be my dad. And she goes, no, your dad is actually Odin. You're the bastard son of Odin, and I am the bastard daughter of Odin. And you and I are basically supposed to be together so that we can be the next Jarl, or be the next Allfather and rulers of the rulers of the world. We're the next, people who are supposed to be the rulers of the world. And so Jaxamous and Valkyrie find each other, and they end up going their separate ways. So But Jaxamous, it's now about 864. The Vikings are almost ready to get beat by the Saxons or the Anglo-Saxons or whatever, and they're about to get kicked out of England, and then the Vikings are almost coming to an end. But Jaxamous is supposedly supposed to fight in this battle with the Vikings, and he never does. He goes on this vision quest again. Goes on this vision thing and ends up going and just disappearing and finally showing up around 1000. 1000, he meets a guy named Leif Erikson. And Leif Erikson goes on this journey and finds this new world. Yeah, this new world. Finds this place and is met with all kinds of different things. And basically Jaxamous is just trying to keep on, moving forward. Well, we're going to have to find out what happens later because, I don't want to give away too much of the story. But, that's the first part of the story. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in Jaxamous's life that we're going to get into, but this whole first story is basically who Jaxamous the Berserker is. Now, I'm sorry that his mother doesn't have a real name. I mean, she's just a lady who basically was a host for Jaxamous, and then Jaxamous ripped out through her when he was born. Basically, Valkyrie came out of, left field, and she basically took care of him. And then when he became 21 years of age, she disappeared again, only to come back and try to kill Rebel J, or try to kill Jaxamous's bear. And then they end up consummating, they end up fucking, and Jaxamous and Valkyrie now feel rejuvenated and feel great to the point where basically they're ready to go on with the next chapter. But the next chapter in their life, Jaxamous ends up just not doing anything until, until around, after the fall of the Vikings, because Jaxamous was supposed to be in the great battle in Essex when the Vikings were supposed to fall, and Jaxamous wasn't there. He was on another vision quest, looking for basically clues and secrets and stuff like that to what kind of a life he was. He was basically helping out all these people grow different crops and vegetables and food and fish and learn all these different ways of the Vikings to basically just become his own style of person, is what basically Jaxamous was. Is he was a guy that people didn't really know much about, but didn't really know where to go from this, and where to turn. So Jaxamous basically became his own entity, and he became his own style of person, just growing up and taking on the world that was thrown in front of him. But this Jaxamous the Berserker story, basically this story is a graphic novel of how me, Jaxamous, basically Jaxamous Claus is who I am, but it goes into all that kind of stuff because now that, we're into almost the end of the Vikings in 840 or 874 or 847, Jaxamous, his hair and his beard and everything else they start to change. Like, he ended up getting white, and his hair started getting white. We were in December. It started getting colder out, but Jaxamous didn't care how cold it was. But he started giving trinkets, and he started giving gifts, and he started giving things to people. And people were like, dude, he's like a saint. And so they started calling him Saint Jaxamous. And Saint Jaxamous, you know, they thought that he was a wonderful guy because he was giving out stuff and helping out people. So they thought he was a saint. So around 874, they thought that he was, you know, starting to think that he was a really cool thing. They thought he was like Santa Claus, you know. They thought he was really cool. They called him Saint Jaxamous. And that was in December. Well, supposedly in December. It was supposed to be when it was really cold. And so that's where the winter solstice came from. Is where Christmas comes from. And they like Saint Jaxamous. And Saint Jaxamous is basically this guy who goes around and gives out stuff at Christmas time. And so that's where Saint Jaxamous comes from. You know, and people think that, you know, that's another version of Santa Claus. But it could be whatever. I mean, it's a story. It's my dream that I had. And everything starts to happen for a reason. And Jaxamous is basically this guy who just goes around and helps people, makes them feel better about themselves. I mean, he is a wonderful person. Valkyrie, she just goes off on her own little world, and Valkyrie, she starts doing her own thing. So Valkyrie does her own damn thing, and Jaxamous does his thing. And yes, Jaxamous gets a little crazy sometimes. He'll go to these different places. He'll meet different people. And all of a sudden, after the fall of the Vikings, they ended up having this fight. Jaxamous disappears. We're over in, like, it's over into the time where we're in, like, the 1000s. It's like 1000. Jaxamous meets this guy named Leif Erikson. Leif Erikson goes on this journey, and Jaxamous goes along with him. And Jaxamous is on this boat. They end up hitting this island. They get to this island. They meet Native Americans. Jaxamous teaches them the ways of all sorts of stuff. And they get into this time where it's like they meet the Native Americans. We're into like the 1100s. Leif Erikson tells people that he found this land and then he's going to head back. But Jaxamous stays on this land. And Jaxamous, basically what he does is Jaxamous is staying on this land. And he builds himself a hut and a fort. And he ends up staying there in this fort, and he ends up, growing crops. He ends up fishing. He has a, he has a lake by his house and a stream that rolls into his house, and he has a waterfall and everything going there. He starts to learn how to do, things like he learns how to make like really weird like arrowheads. Like he learns how to make arrowheads and learns how to, shoot with arrows and tomahawks and throws axes and stuff. And he just ends up, becoming, something. And then what happens is around the time, like it's the 1100s. It's the 1100s. So we're getting into the Native Americans, and, it's getting into this thing that Jaxamous ends up meeting these Native Americans. He ends up like trading and learning with them. He ends up meeting this woman character. He ends up meeting this Native American. She's a doctor. She's the medicine man's daughter. And so one night Jaxamous is out. He's a big guy. Jaxamous is completely and utterly done growing. He's 6'9". Yeah, he's 6 feet 9 inches tall, about 369 pounds. He's basically just built like a brick shithouse. I mean, his arms are massive. Yeah, he's got a massive arms, massive chest. He's basically built so huge that when he meets this girl, he just throws her over her shoulder. And basically she's a Native American witch doctor's daughter. And her name is Steps with a Fighting Wolf. Yeah, it's called Steps Like a Fighting Wolf. And what she is, basically, Jaxamous is going out, and Jaxamous ends up going out, and a buffalo herd ends up knocking Jaxamous out, and Steps sees him laying on the ground, and then she carries him into the teepee. And he's laying there, and he's got a cloth over top of his, because he was basically sleeping in his little hut, and then all of a sudden these buffalo came running and and knocked him out. And then he was laying there. Yeah, he was laying there underneath a cloth, and she just has never seen anything like him. And basically, what happened was Jaxamous was sleeping, and she had the medicine man. He brought Jaxamous in, and then Steps actually tried to look underneath Jack's blanket to see what was underneath the blanket, and Jaxamous woke up, grabs her, and is holding on to her. And then she ended up having like a knife or a tomahawk that she ended up hitting Jaxamous with, and then he ends up going and he blacks out again. And then she runs water on his face, and then Jaxamous comes to, and he's laying there, and he's starting to talk, and he's trying to say things, and he's starting to say things. And Jaxamous is talking, and 69, that's so funny because, yeah, we're getting into 1492 when Columbus comes. Yeah. And that's when the story goes into, Jaxamous ends up meeting Columbus. And, he ends up meeting Columbus. And it's really funny. Goes into the Old West. Yep. So Jaxamous ends up meeting Steps with a Fighting Wolf. And he's laying there on the ground in this teepee. And the medicine man is there with Steps on the other side. And Jaxamous comes too. And she pours water on his face. Jaxamous is standing there, and he's talking. And he's saying stuff like, he's saying like, where am I? Like, what am I? Like, who, what, when, where, why, kind of thing. And the Native American medicine man is saying like, woo-ya, 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 hey. And he's saying something in their native tongue, which is saying, what is he saying? What is he doing? And Steps is like, I don't know. And Steps is like, she goes, I don't know. I don't know what he's saying and what he's doing. And so then Jaxamous ends up falling. He ends up falling asleep again. laying down, and just falls down. And then they take Jaxamous, and he goes. They end up taking him back to his. They end up taking him back to his fort, and they end up putting him back in the fort, and they end up letting him shower, and like, not shower, but he, like, you know, goes and bathes and takes a bath and everything. He takes a bath and he cleans himself up, and for some odd reason, Steps Like a Fighting Wolf is always around. And then what happens is Valkyrie shows up. Now, Valkyrie shows up, and Valkyrie starts talking to Steps. And she starts saying in the native tongue, in Steps' native tongue, who he is. And how he knows her and everything else. And then Steps goes back and tells the medicine man that he's okay, that he's not going to do anything to us. He's basically on a vision quest, and he's learning everything that he can about what he's doing and about what's going on. So he's not a threat. He's going to teach us how to do stuff. And Steps and Valkyrie, they start talking back and forth. So Steps and Valkyrie become really good friends. But Valkyrie, you know, is always, you know, she's always Jaxamous' love interest, because basically that's what Jaxamous falls in love with. But then, Steps with a Fighting Wolf turns out to be interested in Jaxamous, and then she ends up sleeping with Jaxamous. And Steps with a Fighting Wolf is basically your everyday typical Native American woman. She looks like the Land O'Lakes Pocahontas kind of like chick, you know, so she looks like. And Jaxamous ends up sleeping with her, and they produce a son. They produce a Native American son, and it's called Berserker. Yeah, it's called Berserker Tatanka is his name. And that kid grows up to be Berserker Tatanka, which is the son of Berserker Claws. Or Jaxamous the Berserker. Yeah. Yeah, his son becomes Berserker Tatanka. Yeah, Berserker Tatanka is the son of Steps Like a Fighting Wolf, and once Berserker Tatanka gets born, yeah, which comes like 18, well, he becomes like 12 months later, he ends up killing Steps Like a Fighting Wolf, and then he becomes, you know, yeah, Berserker Tatanka. Yeah. Berserker Tatanka becomes, yeah, Berserker Buffalo. That's what his name is. Berserker Buffalo becomes the son of Jaxamous the Berserker. Yeah, and Steps Like a Fighting Wolf. And that happens around getting close to like 1492, when Jaxamous and Steps ends up dying, and their son, Berserker Tatanka, he's about 5 years old, he ends up meeting Christopher Columbus. Yeah, they end up, you know, having a big, you know, Thanksgiving, and then they end up meeting Christopher Columbus. And then Jaxamous, after Christopher Columbus meets the Native Americans and leaves, Jaxamous ends up going on another vision quest. He ends up leaving, going on another vision quest. And then he wakes up in like 18, like he wakes up in like 18 something, 1899 or something like that in the Old West. That's when he wakes up. Yeah. So we've gotten a lot of our things going here with the Jaxamous, the Berserker story. But basically what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up finishing Chapter 1. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are basically, well, Chapter 1, Chapter 1 is who is Jaxamous, the Berserker, and where did he come from, what kind of story or what kind of lifestyle he is, and how he is. And then when we get to Chapter 2, Chapter 2 is basically going to talk about the relationship with Steps Like a Fighting Wolf and everything with the Native Americans finally meeting up to Christopher Columbus and going from there. So the next time that you guys, listen to this story, we will, next time we talk about this story, it'll be Chapter 2 of the Berserker, Jaxamous the Berserker story. I hope you guys enjoyed the first chapter. It sounds kind of like a weird story, but it's actually a pretty decent book. And it's got a very, very long following. I hope I can go a little bit further with it, more detail and everything with you in the next chapter. But this is a book that I've been, well, it's not a book. It's basically dreams is what it is. These are all kind of dreams that I've had. And I've had like almost 20 different dreams of what happens in this Jaxamous story. And basically they are different chapters. And there is a lot of things that happen in this story that Jaxamous is a part of. And basically what it is that he grows up to basically go from the 600s all the way till now. Well, it would be 4 years behind. So we're in 2025. The Jaxamous stories in 2021 is how it goes. It's 4 years behind. Yeah, it's 4 years behind. So, yeah. I don't know why it's 4 years behind, but it's just one of the way things are. I don't know what it is. But when we go into Chapter 2, Chapter 2, we'll talk about the Native Americans and getting into what happens to Steps and Steps with the Fighting Wolf and how we meet Christopher Columbus and all this other stuff. Because Chapter 1 is a really different chapter. It's a really different kind of story. I know you're probably sitting there going, God, this is a very drawn out and long process and long story. But the thing is you got to understand, these are dreams that I've had. And these are dreams that I've had, and I've turned them into a story, and now I'm finally writing these, because the thing is that I actually want to write my graphic novel. So yeah. So thank you very much for listening to my first one. And we'll go from there. Thanks.